There is something truly magical about a fresh, warm donut. It's a simple pleasure that can brighten any morning or make any afternoon feel like a special occasion. While bakery donuts are a wonderful treat, the experience of making them yourself, right in your own kitchen, is a different kind of joy altogether. The aroma of yeast dough rising, the gentle sizzle of frying, and the final dip into a sweet glaze create a memory that is as delicious as the donut itself. Making donuts from scratch might sound intimidating, but it's a rewarding process that connects you to a long tradition of American baking. It's a project that transforms simple pantry staples into something extraordinary. This guide is designed to walk you through every step of that process with clarity and confidence. We will demystify the science behind the dough, from the role of yeast to the importance of resting times. Think of me as your baking companion, here to explain not just the how but also the why behind each technique. Understanding the purpose of each ingredient and step empowers you to troubleshoot and adapt, turning a recipe into a skill you can rely on. Forget the myths that donut making is only for professional bakers. With a little patience and the right knowledge, you can achieve bakery-quality results at home. The beauty of homemade donuts lies in their freshness. A donut eaten moments after it has been fried and glazed is a culinary experience unlike any other. The exterior has a delicate crispness that yields to a soft, pillowy, and slightly chewy interior. This perfect texture is fleeting and can only be truly appreciated when the donuts are fresh from the fryer. Store-bought donuts, no matter how good, have spent time cooling, being packaged, and sitting on a shelf. When you make them yourself, you get to enjoy them at their absolute peak, a luxury that simply cannot be purchased. So, let's roll up our sleeves and embark on this delicious adventure together. This guide will provide you with all the tools you need to master the art of homemade donuts. We will cover everything from selecting your ingredients to troubleshooting common mistakes. By the end, you will not only have a batch of incredible donuts, but also a newfound appreciation for the craft of baking. The satisfaction of sharing a platter of warm homemade donuts with friends and family is a sweet reward that makes every moment spent in the kitchen worthwhile. Get ready to create some magic. Before we begin our donut-making journey, it is essential to gather our ingredients. Precision is key in baking, so using the exact measurements listed will set you up for success. This recipe is designed to produce a classic, reliable, yeast-raised donut that serves as the perfect canvas for any topping or filling you can dream of. Having everything measured and ready to go before you start mixing, a practice known as mise en place, makes the entire process smoother and more enjoyable. It prevents last-minute scrambling and ensures you don't accidentally leave anything out of the dough. Here is the complete list of what you will need for the donut dough. These ingredients are common pantry staples, so you may already have most of them on hand. We will explore the specific role of each one in the next section, but for now, let's focus on getting the quantities just right. Accuracy matters, and using a kitchen scale for flour is always the best practice for consistent results. If you don't have a scale, be sure to fluff your flour before measuring and level the top of the measuring cup with a straight edge. For the donut dough all-purpose flour, 510 grams, which is about 4 1/4 cups, granulated sugar 50 grams, or about 1/4 cup, active dry yeast, 7 grams, which is 1 packet or 2 1/4 teaspoons, fine sea salt, 10 grams, or about 1 1/2 teaspoons, whole milk, lukewarm, 240 milliliters, or 1 cup, large eggs, 2 at room temperature, unsalted butter, softened 57 grams or 4 tablespoons, neutral oil for frying, about 2 quarts, such as canola, vegetable, or peanut oil. In addition to the dough ingredients, you will need components for finishing your donuts. The classic glaze is simple but transforms the plain fried dough into the iconic treat we all know and love. We will also discuss variations for powdered sugar coatings and fillings later on, but for now, let's prepare for the quintessential glazed donut. These ingredients are straightforward and easy to find. The key is to have them ready for when your donuts come out of the fryer, as timing is important for achieving that perfect shiny coating. For the classic glaze powdered sugar, 250 grams, about 2 cups sifted, whole milk or heavy cream, 60 milliliters, which is 1/4 cup, vanilla extract 5 milliliters or 1 teaspoon, and just a pinch of salt. Every ingredient in our donut recipe plays a crucial scientific role in creating the final product's texture, flavor, and appearance. Understanding these roles is like learning the language of baking. Let's start with the foundation all-purpose flour. Flour provides the structure for our donuts. It contains proteins that, when mixed with liquid and kneaded, form gluten. This gluten network is what traps the gas produced by the yeast, allowing the dough to rise and creating that light, airy texture we're after. All-purpose flour has a moderate protein content, which is perfect for achieving a tender crumb that still has a pleasant chew. Next, we have our leavening agent, active dry yeast. Yeast is a living microorganism that feeds on the sugars in the dough. As it consumes these sugars, it releases carbon dioxide gas and alcohol in a process called fermentation. The gas gets trapped by the gluten strands, causing the dough to inflate or rise. This process is what makes our donuts light and puffy instead of dense and heavy. Granulated sugar does more than just add sweetness, it's also the primary food source for the yeast. Additionally, sugar helps to tenderize the dough by interfering with gluten development, and it contributes to the beautiful golden brown color during frying. The liquids and fats in our recipe are just as important. Whole milk provides moisture, which is necessary to hydrate the flour and activate the yeast. The fat and proteins in milk also contribute to a softer crumb and a richer flavor. Using lukewarm milk, around 110 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 degrees Celsius, is critical, as it creates the ideal environment for the yeast to wake up and start working. Eggs are multitaskers. They add flavor, color, and richness from the yolk, while the proteins in the egg whites add to the structure. The fat in the yolks also acts as a tenderizer, much like sugar. Finally, we have salt and unsalted butter. Salt is not just for flavor. It plays a vital role in controlling the yeast's activity, preventing it from fermenting too quickly and exhausting itself. It also strengthens the gluten network, leading to a more stable dough. Unsalted butter adds significant richness, flavor, and tenderness. Because fat coats gluten strands and shortens them, it prevents the dough from becoming tough. Using softened butter and adding it later in the mixing process allows the gluten to develop properly first, resulting in a donut that is the perfect balance of soft, rich, and chewy. Now that we understand our ingredients, it's time to create the dough. The first step is to activate the yeast. In a small bowl, gently whisk together the lukewarm milk, a teaspoon of the granulated sugar, and the active dry yeast. Let this mixture sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. You are looking for it to become foamy and bubbly, which is the sign that your yeast is alive and ready to work its magic. If it doesn't foam, your yeast may be old or the milk might have been too hot or too cold. It's better to start over with fresh yeast than to proceed with a dough that won't rise. While the yeast is blooming, combine the remaining dry ingredients in the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with the dough hook attachment. Add the flour, the rest of the granulated sugar, and the salt, and give it a quick mix to distribute everything evenly. Once your yeast mixture is foamy, pour it into the bowl with the dry ingredients. Add the room temperature eggs as well. Turn the mixer onto a low speed and mix until the ingredients start to come together to form a shaggy, sticky dough. This initial mixing stage is all about hydration, ensuring all the flour comes into contact with the wet ingredients. With the mixer still on low, begin adding the softened unsalted butter, 1 tablespoon at a time. Wait until each piece is mostly incorporated before adding the next. This gradual addition helps the fat emulsify into the dough properly without overwhelming the gluten structure. Once all the butter is in, increase the mixer speed to medium-low and let it knead the dough for about 8 to 10 minutes. The dough will transform from a sticky mess into a smooth, elastic, and slightly tacky ball that pulls away from the sides of the bowl. This kneading process develops the gluten, which is essential for the donut's structure. To check if the dough is properly kneaded, perform the window pane test. Take a small piece of dough and gently stretch it between your fingers. If you can stretch it thin enough to see light through it without it tearing, the gluten is well developed. If it tears easily, it needs a few more minutes of kneading. Once ready, form the dough into a smooth ball. Place it in a large, lightly oiled bowl, turning it once to coat the entire surface with oil. This prevents a dry crust from forming. The mixing and kneading are done, and now the dough is ready for its first important rest. Section 5. The magic of patience, proofing, and shaping your donuts. Alright folks, the next stage is the first proof, also known as bulk fermentation. This is where the yeast gets to work, filling the dough with carbon dioxide and developing those complex flavors we all love. Now, you'll want to cover the bowl with plastic wrap or a clean kitchen towel and place it in a warm, draft-free spot in your kitchen. An ideal temperature is around 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 to 27 degrees Celsius. Let the dough rise for about 1 to 1.5 hours, or until it has visibly doubled in size. A simple way to check if it's ready is to poke it gently with a floured finger. If the indentation remains, the dough is perfectly proofed and ready for the next step. Once the dough has doubled, it's time to shape the donuts. Gently press down on the dough to release some of the gas, then turn it out onto a lightly floured work surface. Using a rolling pin, carefully roll the dough out to a uniform thickness of about 1/2 inch. It's important to handle the dough gently to preserve some of the airiness created during the first proof. Now, using a 3-inch round cutter, press firmly into the dough to cut out your donut circles. Then use a smaller 1-inch round cutter to remove the center, creating that classic donut shape. And hey, don't discard these centers. They can be fried up as delicious donut holes. Place the shaped donuts and donut holes onto a large baking sheet lined with parchment paper, making sure to leave a few inches of space between each one. This brings us to the second proof. This step allows the donuts to become even lighter and puffier before they hit the hot oil. Cover the baking sheet loosely with plastic wrap and let the donuts rest in a warm place for another 30 to 45 minutes. They should look visibly puffed up, almost like little pillows. This final rise is crucial for achieving a light, airy texture. Underproofed donuts will be dense, while overproofed donuts may collapse in the fryer. A great tip for proofing is to create a warm, humid environment. If your kitchen is cool, you can place the covered dough in an oven that is turned off, with a pan of hot water on the rack below. The gentle steam creates a perfect proofing box. For shaping, try not to twist the cutters as you press down, as this can seal the edges and prevent the donuts from rising evenly. A firm, straight-down press is best. Re-roll any dough scraps only once to cut out more donuts, as overworking the dough will make it tough. Section 6. The Golden Touch, Frying to Perfection. Frying is the final, transformative step that turns our soft dough into golden, delicious donuts. The science here is fascinating. When the donut hits the hot oil, the moisture on its surface instantly turns to steam, creating a barrier that prevents the oil from soaking in. The heat from the oil then cooks the dough from the outside in, causing the trapped gases to expand rapidly, which gives the donut its final oven spring, or in this case, fryer spring. This process creates the crisp exterior, while the inside becomes a tender, steamy, and perfectly cooked crumb. The Maillard reaction and caramelization also occur, giving the donuts their beautiful color and rich flavor. To set up for frying, pour about 2 to 3 inches of neutral oil into a heavy-bottomed pot or Dutch oven. The depth of the oil is important. It needs to be deep enough for the donuts to float freely without touching the bottom. Heat the oil over medium heat until it reaches a consistent temperature between 360 and 375 degrees Fahrenheit, or 182 to 190 degrees Celsius. A digital or candy thermometer is absolutely essential here. If the oil is too cool, the donuts will absorb too much grease and become heavy. If it's too hot, the outside will burn before the inside has a chance to cook through. Once the oil is at the correct temperature, it's time to fry. Carefully place 2 or 3 donuts into the hot oil, being careful not to overcrowd the pot, as this will cause the oil temperature to drop. Fry the donuts for about 60 to 90 seconds per side. They should be a beautiful, deep golden brown. Use a spider strainer or a slotted spoon to gently flip them over. Once both sides are golden, remove the donuts from the oil and place them on a wire rack set over a baking sheet to drain any excess oil. Fry the donut holes as well. They will cook much faster, only needing about 30 seconds per side. Maintaining a steady oil temperature is the most important part of frying. Adjust the heat on your stove as needed to keep the thermometer in the target range between batches. It's also helpful to let the oil come back up to temperature before adding the next batch of donuts. A clean frying environment is a safe one, so be mindful of any oil splatters and never leave the pot of hot oil unattended. With careful temperature management, you will be rewarded with donuts that are perfectly light, crisp on the outside, and fluffy on the inside. Section 7. Dressing up your donuts. Glazed, filled, and powdered. With your donuts perfectly fried and cooling slightly on the wire rack, it's time for the most creative part, finishing them. The classic vanilla glaze is a perfect place to start. In a medium bowl, whisk together the sifted powdered sugar, milk or cream, vanilla extract, and a pinch of salt. The consistency should be thin enough to dip the donuts easily, but thick enough to coat them without being completely transparent. If it's too thick, add more milk a teaspoon at a time. If it's too thin, add more sifted powdered sugar. For the best results, dip the donuts while they are still warm, but not hot. To make classic glazed donuts, simply take a warm donut and dip its top half into the bowl of glaze. Lift it out, allowing any excess glaze to drip back into the bowl, then turn it right side up and place it back on the wire rack. The warmth of the donut will help the glaze set into a thin, semi-translucent shell that cracks ever so slightly when you take a bite. Allow the glaze to set for about 10 to 15 minutes before serving. This simple finish highlights the pure, delicious flavor of the donut itself. For powdered donuts, the process is even simpler. Allow the fried donuts to cool for just a minute or two. They should still be warm. Place a generous amount of powdered sugar in a paper bag or a wide, shallow bowl. Add 1 or 2 warm donuts at a time and gently toss them until they are completely coated in a thick layer of sugar. The residual heat and slight oiliness on the donut's surface will help the powdered sugar adhere beautifully. Transfer them to a serving plate and enjoy the simple, sweet, and slightly messy perfection. Creating filled donuts like Boston cream or jelly-filled Bismarcks requires a slightly different approach. For these, you should not cut a hole in the center of the dough. Instead, fry the solid rounds of dough until they are puffed up and golden. Once they have cooled completely, use a small, sharp knife to make an incision in the side of each donut. Fit a pastry bag with a long, thin tip, like a Bismarck tip. Fill it with your desired filling, be it vanilla pastry cream, raspberry jam, or lemon curd, and gently pipe the filling into the center of the donut until it feels plump. These can then be topped with a chocolate ganache or a dusting of powdered sugar. Section 8. Sidestepping Common Pitfalls, a beginner's troubleshooting guide. Even with the most detailed recipe, things can sometimes go awry, especially for first-time donut makers. One of the most common issues is dough that doesn't rise. This is almost always a problem with the yeast. It could be expired, or the milk used to activate it was too hot, which kills the yeast, or too cold, which won't wake it up. The solution is to always check the expiration date on your yeast packet and use a thermometer to ensure your milk is at that just right lukewarm temperature, around 110 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 degrees Celsius. A bubbly, foamy yeast mixture is your guarantee of a good rise. Another frequent problem is greasy, heavy donuts. This is a direct result of improper oil temperature. If the oil is not hot enough, the donut will sit in it for too long before the crust forms, allowing it to absorb an excessive amount of oil. The fix is non-negotiable. Use a thermometer. Maintaining that 360 to 375 degrees Fahrenheit or 182 to 190 degrees Celsius window is the single most important factor for a light, non-greasy donut. Also, avoid overcrowding the pot, as adding too many donuts at once will cause the oil temperature to plummet. Fry in small batches and allow the oil to recover its heat between them. Sometimes bakers end up with donuts that are tough and bready rather than light and pillowy. This can be caused by a few things: using too much flour, over-kneading the dough, or re-rolling the scraps too many times. To avoid this, measure your flour accurately, preferably with a scale. When kneading, stop once the dough passes the window pane test. Going too far can overdevelop the gluten. When you roll out the dough scraps for a second time, handle them as little as possible. The donuts from the second rolling will always be a little tougher than the first, which is perfectly normal. Finally, you might encounter donuts that are beautifully golden on the outside but raw and doughy on the inside. This is the opposite of the greasy donut problem. Your oil is too hot. The high heat cooks and darkens the exterior very quickly, long before the heat has had a chance to penetrate and cook the center of the donut. Again, the solution is a reliable thermometer. If you notice your donuts are browning too fast, in less than 60 seconds, lower the heat on your stove and let the oil cool down to the correct temperature range before you continue frying your next batch. Section 9. Your donut journey begins. You have now journeyed through the entire process of creating homemade donuts, from understanding the science of your ingredients to mastering the art of the perfect fry. You are equipped with the knowledge to mix, knead, proof, shape, and finish these delightful treats with confidence. The techniques you've learned are not just for donuts. They are fundamental baking skills that will serve you well in many other culinary adventures. The ability to control yeast, develop gluten, and manage temperature are the cornerstones of a great baker. You have turned flour, sugar, and yeast into something truly special. Remember that every batch you make is a learning experience. Your first donuts might not look as perfect as the ones in a bakery window, and that is completely okay. They will still be delicious, and more importantly, they will be yours. Don't be discouraged by small imperfections. Perhaps one batch is slightly darker, or another is a little less puffy. Take note of what happened and think back to the steps. Was the oil a bit too hot? Did the dough need a little more time to proof? Each attempt will make you a more intuitive and skilled baker. The true magic of making donuts at home is not just in the eating, but in the making. It's in the quiet moments of watching dough rise, the focus required for frying, and the creative joy of decorating. It's a process that invites you to slow down and be present in your kitchen. The skills and confidence you build will inspire you to experiment further. Perhaps you'll try a different glaze, like maple or chocolate, or infuse your dough with spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. Maybe you'll invent your own signature filling. The possibilities are endless. So take this guide, head to your kitchen, and begin your own donut-making story. Share your warm, fresh creations with people you love and watch their faces light up with delight. That is the ultimate reward. You have unlocked the secret to one of America's most iconic desserts, and the power to create a little bit of happiness is now right at your fingertips. Happy baking, and may your donut adventures be sweet, successful, and endlessly satisfying. You are now a donut maker.